The rain never stopped at Camp Daggerfall. It whispered on the tin rooftops, slid down the concrete walls, and coiled like fog between the old satellite dishes and sandbagged guard posts. Deep underground, past steel vault doors and retinal scanners that no one ever questioned. A woman worked in silence. Private Lynn Carver. No one called her private. Most just said, "Hey, archivist, or worse, deadweight." She was stationed in the lowest level of the intelligence bunker, a place so forgotten that even rats had trouble breathing down there. Her job sorting through decades of outdated mission logs, field recordings, and tactical blueprints from wars most of these soldiers had never even heard of. A few of them said she got the job because her uncle was some general. Others said she used to be a failed professor. One even joked she was a spy from the North sentenced to death by boredom. None of it was true, but no one ever asked her the truth. Mess hall's 0700 hours. She stood alone at the end of the line. Same bland tray, same plain face, same faded uniform without unit insignia. No one offered her a seat. "Hey, dust rat?" It was Sergeant Keene, again shaved head, thick neck, the kind of guy who thought sweat proved strength. Lynn paused, tray in hand. Her gaze barely lifted. "You filed the war yet?" Laughter erupted from two tables. One soldier leaned over, tapping his helmet. "She's probably memorizing every casualty report from the last century." Another, "She thinks knowledge wins wars." She said nothing. Sat at a corner table, head down, posture straight, eating slowly, mechanically, like it didn't bother her. But her fingers trembled once. Only once. That night, they left a note on her locker. "Not a soldier. Not welcome." Written in red marker. She stared at it for a long time, then opened her locker. Inside was nothing but folders, and one hand-drawn map, a recreation of a forgotten border clash in 1993, a battle erased from official records, but not from her mind. She closed the locker. The note stayed there, a reminder. Briefing room. Operation Winds here. The air reeked of overconfidence. The mission was simple, a tactical sweep of a suspected rebel munitions depot in Grid 14 near the mountain gorge. AI scans showed minimal activity. Satellite feeds gave the green light. Lynn sat in the back corner, silent, half-shadowed. She had no invitation to be there, but no one stopped her. She stared at the holographic terrain map on the screen, and something in her stomach turned. The pattern's heat distribution, comm delays, topographic distortions, they matched something she'd seen before, years ago, buried in Cold War data dumps. It wasn't a depot, it was a trap. She tried to speak after the meeting. First to Lieutenant Rivas, then to Sergeant Keene, even to the mission analyst. All waved her off. "Look, we've got drones and satellites now." Keene said, chuckling, "We don't need bedtime stories from 1987. She pulled out the old recon chart. The same terrain, the same false elevation lines. They didn't even look. "You're not command. You're a filing cabinet. Stay in your basement." That one came from a junior comms tech. A kid barely old enough to shave. Next morning, 0430 hours, deployment. Engines roared, 4 Humvees loaded, weapons checked, jokes flying, soldiers confident. Lynn stood on the edge of the loading bay. No gear, no rifle, just her datapad. No one even noticed her, but her face was pale. She turned, sprinted back down the bunker stairs, past the server rooms, past the warning signs, back to her archives. She didn't sit. She didn't breathe. She searched. She broke protocol, accessed old systems, cross-referenced declassified recon from 1994, matched satellite interference patterns, compared echo logs from the canyon to pulse wave simulations used in Cold War decoy operations. It was the same technique. Someone or something was feeding Central Command recycled heat signatures, old ghost signals, faking rebel movement where there was none. And where the recon drones didn't fly, the canyon walls were loaded with buried charges. Operation Windshear wasn't walking into a depot. They were driving straight into a kill box. But she had no clearance to override. No voice on the comms. No one would answer her calls. Unless she reached into the side drawer. A chipped metal tag. No one in base knew what it was. Not a medal, not a key. But when she pressed her thumb on the underside, a forgotten back channel came alive. Command Relay Daggerfall, emergency line, classification Ghost Protocol. Her eyes sharpened, voice calm. Urgent intercept. Operation Wind Shear is compromised. Redirect immediately to Grid Delta 9. Coordinates falsified. Repeat, falsified. In the canyon 13 minutes later, Sergeant Keene blinked. "Who the hell is speaking on our mission channel?" No one answered. The voice repeated, "Abort. Delta 9. You are being baited into an ambush designed in 1994. Silence. Then Lieutenant Rivas growled, "Who is this?" The voice didn't respond. But the override codes checked out. A split second later, a drone finally reconnected and sent fresh imagery. Heat surge, buried ordnance. The whole canyon floor was rigged. They froze. No one laughed now. No one spoke. Back at Camp Daggerfall, Lynn sat alone in the archive room. The lights flickered overhead. No medals, no thanks, just the hum of old servers. But in the distance, the sounds of returning vehicles broke the dawn silence. They were coming back, alive, because of her. Camp Daggerfall's 0630 hours. The sky was still dark when the convoy returned. Mud sprayed across the Humvee's windshield armor, chipped by shrapnel that shouldn't have existed. Every soldier looked different, now quieter, paler eyes darting toward shadows. No one joked, no one even mentioned her name, but they all knew. Someone had intervened. Someone not in the chain of command. And now that someone was a problem, Lieutenant Rivas stormed into the central office. Who gave that override? His voice cracked with something between fear and shame. The comms tech shrugged. It came through the Ghost Protocol relay. Level 5 priority tag. Non-cancelable. That relay's supposed to be dead. Well, it ain't. Rivas turned to the mission analyst. Find out who has access to that relay. Now. His jaw clenched. He knew who it was, and he didn't like it. Archive bunker. Lynn was already back at her desk. Calm. Focused. Her fingers moved through files like a machine. Her eyes didn't look tired, they looked braced. She knew someone would come. And they did. The door slammed open. Rivas stepped in, followed by Keene and 2 MPs. "Stand up," she obeyed. "Who authorized you to access a Ghost Protocol channel?" She said nothing. "Answer me, Private. Who gave you that clearance?" She stared at him. No anger, no fear. Just a quiet, steady gaze. Then finally her voice soft, deliberate. "The war did. They dragged her to the holding wing, confiscated her datapad, disconnected her terminal access. No charges, no lawyer, just suspicion. But even behind the locked door, she didn't protest. Instead, she waited, watching, listening. Meanwhile, at Intelligence HQ, a report landed on the desk of Colonel Tannis, who oversaw regional field ops. He wasn't supposed to care about a single redirection in a minor zone, but something caught his eye. Ghost Protocol override, time-stamped and correct. Someone had saved a platoon using a protocol decommissioned 8 years ago. Yet the codes were clean, the logic tight. Not AI, not satellite-fed. Human memory, human mind. Pattern recognition on a level he'd seen once before. He picked up his phone. "Get me everything on Private Lynn Carver." Back at Daggerfall, things were shifting. The soldiers who had laughed at her now sat in silence during meals. Some stole glances at the empty seat in the corner where Lynn always sat. Others spoke in whispers. "Did you hear she knew the canyon was rigged? From a 30-year-old file. They say she memorized the whole mountain grid from the Cold War logs. She's not normal. She's dangerous." Not all whispers were kind. That night, Sergeant Keene stood outside the holding wing arms, crossed, staring through the reinforced glass at her cell. Lynn sat calmly on the cot, back straight, hands folded. "Why'd you do it?" he asked softly. No reply. "You could have just let us walk in and die." Still nothing. He shook his head. "You scare the hell out of people, you know that." Only then did she meet his eyes. Good. Next morning, Colonel Tannis arrived by airlift. No ceremony, no delay. He walked straight into the bunker, holding cell. The guard stepped aside without a word. "Private Carver," he said, standing before her. "How long have you been watching that canyon?" She answered without pause. "Since the file was misfiled in 2012 under a false ID tag. It bothered me. I corrected it. Logged the echo changes monthly." "Why?" Because the silence in that zone wasn't natural. He studied her. No twitch, no fidgeting. Her mind was a machine built for context and pattern. I want you out of this room. Now. Within the hour she was cleared, reinstated. But something had changed. She wasn't just the girl in the basement anymore. Now Command knew her name. That afternoon, Tanis convened a classified debrief. Only senior officers attended. Lynn stood before the wall of tactical maps, pointer in hand. The room was silent. What you're looking at is a misfiled battlefield deception first used in 1987 by Soviet-aligned militias in the Georgian Pass. Same topography, same seismic mask, same false depot. She clicked to the next slide. The enemy recycled the deception. Our AI systems were fooled. The only match in our system was buried manually. I retrieved it. She paused. I remembered it. One general leaned forward. All of it. She nodded. Later, as they exited, Tanis turned to Rivas. She's not here by accident. She's here because someone in Black Command put her in storage, waiting for a moment like this. Rivas didn't argue. He simply whispered, "Then God help whoever gave her a reason to wake up." 2 weeks later, somewhere near the northern exclusion zone, Lynn Carver stood under the copper light of a tactical lamp in Forward Post Vega. The room was filled with combat leaders and intel analysts. Not one of them spoke. She traced her fingers across the map. "The enemy is not fighting a war. They're replaying one." Colonel Tanis leaned in. "Explain." She tapped 4 grids. "These strike patterns are mirror copies of an old East Asia infiltration doctrine from the 1980s repurposed. They're hiding in our archives, reusing failures we never expected to matter." Someone scoffed. "No one memorizes 40-year-old war doctrine, Carver." She finally turned to face them, eyes hard, voice colder. "I do." Back in Camp Daggerfall, rumors had spread like wildfire. She doesn't sleep. She reads battle reports like bedtime stories. Someone said she was part of Project Mnemosyne. Ever heard of that? She remembered the entire logistical collapse of the 1998 Taklamakan retreat. Line by line, what was once mockery had shifted into unease. And then, into respect. But quietly. No one dared say it out loud. Flashback classified training center, 12 years earlier. White halls, no windows. Children sat at long desks. No speaking, just data. A trainer paced behind them. "You are not taught, you are loaded." Each child had a neural reinforcement device clipped behind their ears. Only one didn't blink when simulations overloaded. Only one could cross-reference 6 conflicts and predict outcomes without error. Her name was Lynn. Back then they called her Mnemonic Ghost, part of a forgotten experiment in warfare cognition. Most failed, some broke. She remembered everything. Present day, Daggerfall. Colonel Tanis pulled Sergeant Keene aside. "Do you know what she is?" Keene hesitated. He'd been watching her more closely these days. She moved like she saw through time. Every file, every silence, she treated it like a clue. He replied softly, "She's the only person in this base who knows we've fought this war before and lost." Inside the war room, the satellite feed showed a formation shift from enemy lines. Subtle, deliberate. The analyst struggled to interpret it, but Lynn stepped forward. "That's a containment maneuver. Pre-nuclear strategy, the same used in the 1975 coastal border standoff. They're preparing to isolate us." A colonel blinked. "That war was before you were born." She looked him dead in the eye. "I know." That night, she returned to the archive bunker. No guard stopped her anymore. The door opened for her automatically now. She walked past the familiar shelves, but this time her steps echoed with authority. She pulled an old physical binder from a sealed container, red-coded burn-labeled. She didn't need to read it. She had memorized every page 6 years ago. What she was looking for was a mistake, a flaw the enemy had reused, and she found it. Next morning she approached Rivas. For the first time he didn't scoff, didn't roll his eyes. She handed him a plan. "I need command authorization to move 2 units through this canyon. The enemy believes it collapsed years ago. It hasn't. It was misfiled." He stared at her. "How the hell do you know that?" She met his gaze. "Because I never forget a lie." 48 hours later, her plan went operational. 2 squads slipped through the abandoned canyon, intercepted a shadow convoy, recovered critical enemy comms. Everything she predicted exactly right. The mission was a success. And Lynn Carver, once called Dust Rat Deadweight Librarian, was now getting call signs whispered across field comms. Ghostmind, Oracle, the Archive. But she didn't gloat. She didn't speak at briefings. She stayed in the shadows, watching, knowing. The war was only beginning, and her mind was the only one that remembered how to win it. Thunder rumbled over Camp Daggerfall, not from the sky but from the war front. 12 clicks east, a full-scale offensive had begun. The enemy surged with unfamiliar precision, overwhelming forward outposts one by one. AI guidance failed. Satellite scans returned corrupted. It was chaos. The command tent was a blur of shouts, failed updates, and maps covered in red. No one had a plan, until a calm voice spoke from the doorway. "You're not looking at it the right way." Heads turned. Lynn Carver stepped into the war room, sleeves rolled hair tied back her datapad, glowing with dozens of overlapping maps and timelines. Colonel Tannis didn't hesitate. Let her speak. She walked to the center table, no longer invisible. "They're not attacking. They're correcting." Confused silence. "This isn't a strategy, it's a reconstruction. They're trying to rewrite the outcome of the 2007 fall of Vada." Keen frowned. "That's impossible. That battle was classified." She turned to him, not angry, just tired. "Classified doesn't mean forgotten." She began dragging overlays across the holographic map. "They're mimicking old failures and fixing them. Rewriting history in real time. I've tracked 6 battles across 3 eras. They're learning from our archives." Someone whispered, stunned, "Using our past against us." She nodded. "But I've already seen how it ends. Unless we do something they didn't." Tannis leaned in. "Then give us a move they've never read." Lynn's eyes sharpened. She tapped 3 remote valleys. "Fake a collapse in our left flank. Make it look like we're routing. Let them advance, overextend, then cut their supply vein from the canyon wall." Another officer interjected. "We don't have time to dig in." Lynn turned her pad around. "We don't need to. The 1983 drought hollowed these ridgelines. There's a natural cave network behind the bluff, long buried, never scanned." She paused. "I read the geological surveys. I memorized them years ago." Tannis slammed his fist down. "Do it!" Rivas didn't argue. Keen didn't smirk. No one doubted her anymore. 12 hours later, the trap was set. Lynn stood on an overlook headset linked to all units. The operation, codenamed Reversal, moved in silence. Enemy forces advanced into the faux retreat. They celebrated too early. The ridgeline detonated. The cave passage opened, and from the rocks, 3 ghost squads surged behind enemy lines, slicing the command spine. It was surgical. It was brutal. It was exactly as she predicted. At dawn, the silence returned. Not from fear, but peace. For the first time in weeks, Camp Daggerfall was quiet. She walked through the base that morning. No more laughter behind her back. No more mutters of Dust Rat. No more notes on her locker. Only eyes, watching, respecting. A young private stepped aside and saluted her awkwardly. She nodded. Even Sergeant Keen, standing with his arms crossed near the comms tower, gave her a single look and a quiet nod of approval. In the command tent, Tannis updated HQ, requesting formal reclassification of Private Lynn Carver. Transfer her rank clearance and authority, effective immediately. HQ hesitated. "Under what grounds?" He replied. "She didn't just save our soldiers, she saved our past and made it usable again." Later that week, a nameplate appeared on the archive bunker. No longer faded, no longer scratched. Tactical Memory Unit, CDR Lynn Carver, alias the Archivist. But she still sat alone, still read late into the night, still spoke softly. Because for her, war was never about medals or salutes or revenge. It was about never letting mistakes repeat, about listening to the voices long buried in forgotten files and making sure they didn't die in vain. One evening, Rivas approached her outside the archives. "You ever wonder why they put you here?" She stared out at the horizon. "Not anymore." He nodded. "You're not just a soldier." She glanced back. "I know." And as the last rays of light hit her face, The scars of silence became her strength, not because she shouted to be heard, but because she remembered when everyone else forgot.